So, you're curious about the workflow, huh? Okay. Won't beat around the bush. Come on, let's get into it. Don't worry. I'll try to be thorough. No, really, when I say thorough, I mean thorough. I made this whole chart. Sure, maybe it looks like I spent 5 minutes making it in Photoshop, but it actually took a lot longer than that. I promise you that. It took a lot longer.
Not funny.
To visualize it, I'll be taking you along the process of I created this piece. It's my personal take on this lesser known video game called Hollow Knight. Check it out if you've never heard of it. And like any great story, we must start at the beginning. And the start is always the hardest part. For some reason, it feels like for the first hour or two that I'm working on it, I just think, oh, this is gonna be terrible. To this day, however many characters I've made by now, I still think that when I'm first starting off. Like, I'll be sitting there, I've worked on it for an hour, and this is what I'm looking at, and I'm just like, I can't
Take this shit no more, man.
Because I feel like it's so important, I'm gonna spend a little bit more time here. I always start out with one of the 3 following methods. Either from a sphere, which allows for the most flexibility in design, but normally ends up taking the longest to get from start to finish. If I know the geometry isn't gonna be too complicated, and I already know what basic shape I'm going for, then I'll start off by modeling, because I find that's the fastest way to get good topology in the shape that I want. Or, ideally, if you already have on your computer a base mesh that's close to what you want, start from there. Naturally, the biggest downside of this would be you actually have a base mesh that's appropriate for your project. Also, something I feel like a few of you need to hear. Unless you're specifically trying to practice something like some type of anatomy or specific design practice, don't be some weird kind of proud purist and not use a base mesh just because, oh no, that's not really starting from nothing. That's actively cringe. With this character, I felt modeling the base would be the best course of action since it's just a 3D version of a 2D character and I knew exactly what I was going for. However, the hands were just pre-made ones I had from another model which I brought in because I hate creating hands. It's unnecessarily tedious, and if you've done one good pair, why do it again? When I know I'm going to be sculpting on a character as well, I take extra care to make sure that the geometry is evenly spaced out and normally in perfect square type shapes. And you'll see why pretty soon. Then for detailing, I prefer to use ZBrush. That's just me though, of course. To each their own. The GoZ or GoB add-on for Blender makes the process of transferring a model between ZBrush and Blender very quick and easy and convenient. So if you're doing something similar, I'd recommend it. One note though, it stores the files on your computer as it transfers them and it doesn't delete them by itself. But dig through the files on my computer and clean out the clutter from the add-on. In this case, since I'm using a pre-made base mesh, I don't use anything fancy like ZeroMesh or Dynamesh. I just use straight up subdivisions to get the level of detail I think is required for the project. Wow, look at me using the big fancy words, eh? It's pretty good. After detailing, I take a high detail and low detail version of the model and put them back into Blender. Oh, look at that. Sour key. If I'd started from something like a sphere and I didn't have a low detail version of the mesh, this is where it's time to retopologize. Oh, even the word just makes me wanna, makes me wanna. Retopology is an ungodly, terrible, and time-consuming process, but of course sometimes it's necessary. I would personally recommend you be very thorough with learning and practice when it comes to retopology. I think one of the most important things to focus on is keeping the mesh as low detail as possible, using as few loops and vertices as you can until you have a complete model, and then you can add detail as you feel necessary. Also, definitely read the Retopo Flow add-on. A little secret, if you look really hard, you might be able to find it for free. Of course, now you're wondering, how do we get the details from the high-res to the low-res model? Sorry, my bad. That guy just slips out sometimes. I like to use multi-res and shrink wrap modifiers, and then I'm able to have the low poly model, but I have a completely adjustable level of detail. As for the settings on the modifiers, on the multi-res, I'll change the subdivision method between camel, Clark, and simple, depending on whatever looks better. For the shrink wrap, I find that changing it to project, on surface, turning on negative, and increasing the limit until all of the issues go away generally looks better. But sometimes just the default works. Again, it's based on whatever I think looks better. And then the UV unwrapping, I don't do anything really out of the ordinary. If the mesh is symmetrical, I'll delete half and use a mirror modifier. I solely judge the quality of a UV map based off of what the area stretching says. If it looks all blue or even like a little bit green, all the way up to a little bit yellow in some places, I'll probably pass it off as fine. Now that we have UVs, we can bake normal maps from the high poly versions of the models to catch any of the fine details that are too small for the multi-resolution modifier. Making normal maps is such a nice segue into talking about textures. And regardless of the fact that Adobe has completely pissed all over it, I still really enjoy using Substance Painter for my texturing. That is, if I'm planning on doing detailed texturing. If I can get by just using shaders and nodes in Blender, I'll do that, because doing the bare minimum is always the way to go. For rigging, all I have to say is I use the Meta Rig add-on for every single rig I've ever made, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Then there's the whole process of posing, setting up the scene, and the camera, and the lighting, which for the longest time I did not give the attention it deserved, and my work really suffered for it. And I know you're gonna watch this and go, oh yeah, no, I put plenty of time into my composition, it looks fine. But no, how can I put this in a way you'll understand? Oh, I got it. A pro photographer can take a mundane, everyday, scene and make it look really amazing. But someone who doesn't know what they're doing can take a really, really cool potential shot and make it look boring. You see where I'm going with this? So, keep it in mind. And don't think you can skip out on the post-processing. That would be like, I don't know, not flossing after you brush your teeth. I feel like there's lots of people who don't actually floss. Maybe that wasn't the best analogy. Oops. Anyway, it's like a nice little sherry on top, so don't neglect it. To be honest, all I ever really do is a little bit of lens distortion and color correction. It never really gets much more crazy than that, but that little bit can go a long way. And there we go, from start to finish. Thank you for joining me on this nice little journey. And if after watching this, you feel like, oh, that was a lot, I can't do that, or discouraged in any kind of way, remember, everyone is at different places on their journey. And if you just take your time to learn and improve bit by bit, you'll do great. Also, remember, you'll never be better than me. Try and you'll die tired.